Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of The Wiccan Conservative. Today we are going to be talking about a subject that I'm really passionate about, and that is voting. I would like to start to educate as many people as possible about the importance of voting, and not only just voting in the presidential elections, but voting in all elections. So what I have up here on the screen for you today is from electproject.org, and it is the voter eligible people turnout rates from 1789 to 2018. And if you go to the electproject.org website, it gives you a bunch of statistics and different things that would be useful to you to know about what's going on with our voting practices and how our voters are turning out. But I would just like to make a couple points while I'm on the subject. So if you go down to the table, there's a spreadsheet here, and it'll give you all the years and the dates so that you can see the numbers for yourself. But I'm going to go ahead and just use this little graph that we have here for the presidential elections and the midterm elections. You can see that the turnout rates for the presidential elections have not always been higher than the midterm elections. That actually that is much more of a recent turnout rate. So the midterm elections have gone dramatically downhill. And as a matter of fact, the highest turnout for a midterm election was in 1866. And they only turned out at a 71.4 percentage of voter eligible people coming out to vote in the midterm election. And honestly, since then, the numbers have only declined. So in 2018, we only had 50.3% of voter eligible people turn out for a midterm election. And unfortunately, to me, that is very, very concerning, because we are starting to lose sight of who and what is the most powerful driving factor in our government today. So when you start talking about elections and election cycles and things to that effect, you will have people come out and tell you that they don't participate in a lot of local elections. They don't participate in a lot of midterm elections. They only turn out for presidential elections. And then they're really, get on the, kind of a complaining bandwagon about, well, my candidate didn't win, and with the Electoral College, my vote really doesn't count. And why should I continue to participate in a system where my voice isn't heard? Well, I think that's a lot of ignorance in those statements. And I think that it's because we have stopped teaching our kids exactly how important elections are. And we stopped looking at the founding fathers' ideas of how they separated the powers of our government and how much power each individual branch holds as opposed to another. So when a lot of people think that they're going out and they're voting for the president of the United States, they are very shocked to learn that they are actually voting for electors to go out and cast a ballot on their behalf. And they're very upset with the fact that these people ultimately, they can listen to the people or they cannot listen to the people. They can go in there and as an electoral voter, they can go in and make a decision that they feel is better than what the quote unquote popular vote is. So when you talk about, participating in midterm elections and congressional elections, we need to understand that these are the people that are making our laws. So when you are participating in a midterm election, you are actually nominating somebody who ends up representing your state and representing the voice of your area. So the people that you're voting for in the midterm elections actually are the ones that are going to carry your voice on high And they're the ones who you're putting the most trust in to do what your state wants them to do. So many people would say, I don't have the time and my vote doesn't matter. And why should I do this? And I just laugh because of the sudden increase in wanting to abolish the Electoral College because of unfair biases or prejudice or race or whatever the issue is. And they don't even realize that you have the opportunity to take advantage of a popular vote in the midterm elections, because that's how those people end up winning their jobs. It's a popular vote of the people of the state. And that's what the difference is with the midterm elections and the presidential elections, as far as how they win a spot in whatever office it is that they're running for. So yes, popularity matters in a midterm election, but it's not on a national level. You don't get to vote for my governor in Georgia or a person in Iowa to step into their Senate. Everybody in the state gets to vote for who they feel is the best candidate. And they break it up into all different kinds of different dimensions. So if you go in here and like I said, on Elect Project, there's a lot of different information that you can get here. You can get primary election turnout rates. You can get voter turnout demographics. You can get precinct data. You can get all different kinds of information that will tell you what type of people are coming out to vote and how many people are participating in these types of elections. So I found this website to be very, very helpful and very interesting to kind of dig into and get to the bottom of who's coming out to vote and who's putting these people into power. The next thing that comes up usually whenever you're talking about elections and what elections to participate in is term limits for our Congress and our Senate. So when you look at the congressional midterm elections, the main takeaway is that you set the term limits for these House representatives, for these senators. We have, the opportunity, like I said, to flip 435 congressional seats, all the House. You have the power to flip the entire House every 2 years. You have the power to flip 1/3 of the Senate every 2 years. What more power do you need to have? What type of desired end goal would a term limit give to the American public that they don't already have, other than to stop somebody who is steeped in constitutional values from continuing to maintain those constitutional values over a period of time? Now, obviously, if they're doing a good job, we wouldn't want to take them out of office and replace them with somebody who would not do a good job or would kind of buck and heave the system. So if everybody's in agreement that this person is doing what they should be doing, I don't feel that they should be limited on the amount of time that they continue to uphold our Constitution. But on the contrary, we as Americans need to take, again, more personal responsibility for these people who are getting in and they're not doing what they promised us that they were going to do. So when you talk about participating in elections and voting and, being an active participant of government, it's really annoying to hear people give you excuses like, I don't care, or I don't have the time, or my vote doesn't matter, because they don't understand the system. So whenever you are going to vote, I would prefer you to do some research. And I always said that the best way to find out how somebody is going to act in office or how they're going to portray, legislation to enact would be to look at their voting history. So if they have any type of experience on their hands, then you can go back and you can look at the votes that they have made in the past. And that's going to give you a really good idea as to what they're going to propose and what they're going to vote on in the future. Now, if you follow anything that's going on in Georgia, you'll know that Kelly Loeffler was just signed into office yesterday, I believe it was. And we don't have a track record on her. She has never held an office that we could go back and look at a voting record. And a lot of people in Georgia are kind of afraid of what she's going to bring to the table and what she's going to do. And obviously, it was a governor appointed position. We didn't have a vote. We didn't have a say. So everybody's kind of nervous about what's going to happen. And they're looking at a lot of her associates to kind of gauge where she is or what her legislation will be. And in a way, that's, kind of unfair if you ask me. I like to associate with a lot of different people. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I associate with, unsavory people or people that don't hold my same ideas and values. But not everybody thinks exactly the same way that I do. And I really want my actions to be judged or based off of somebody else's. So I'm not going to do that either. I'm not going to look at your associates and say that you're going to act one way opposed to another. But what I would say that you could look into is her charity work. You can look in to see what she's donating to see what type of lifestyle she leads. If she is, promoting a family atmosphere, and she takes care of her family and she's, a certain type of person who is always involved in those sorts of things, it's fair to say that she would probably vote more family oriented or more geared towards things that would be pro-family. But if she is not living the lifestyle that she's promoting, then there's a good chance that she's probably not going to support those pieces of legislation. Time will tell with any politician. We don't really have, a lie detector test that we could use to make sure that each individual politician is going to hold their word. But we go back into the midterms being the most important elections that you can participate in, because after those 2 years, you start to get a really good idea about what that person is all about. And then you have the opportunity to either remove them from office or keep them in office. If you like what they're doing, then you need to keep them in office. So I'm kind of wishy-washy when it comes down to creating term limits for our legislative body. I don't want to see somebody who's on a roll with upholding the Constitution and doing a good job get yanked out of a position simply because they hit that term limit, when you have somebody that's running against them that is going to either undo or pass legislation that's completely opposite of what these people were doing. The biggest thing right now is everybody kind of talking about the majority rule and once we get the majority, and you're seeing it now in Virginia as well, the Democrats coming out and saying, well, now we hold both the House and the Senate in Virginia, and now we can officially pass these pieces of legislation that we want, and we can kind of do what we want. And that's the scary thing about it. And that's how we roll into this kind of partisan type of politics, where you have people who are just waiting and biding their time until they hold the majority to get things passed that they couldn't get passed when you had a solid member in your House or in your Senate. So I really don't agree with term limits. I think that the American people just need to take back their role of checking and balancing the government. And we need to be on top of the candidates that we are electing and the candidates that we put out there for election. It doesn't take a whole lot to get onto a ballot. I mean, yeah, it's a big process. Yeah, you have to come up with a lot of money, and yeah, you have to do a lot of campaigning and all that wonderful stuff. But it really, it remains to be seen how beneficial it would be for there to be term limits, so to speak, in order to get the American public re-involved in the election cycle. The other big thing that we can talk about is election meddling. And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with the topic today, because if we were participating in elections the way that we were meant to participate in these elections, I think that we would have a lot less interference. And everybody wants to go and talk about foreign election meddling. And to be honest, I've said this a million times. I don't understand how a Twitter campaign or an ad on Facebook, or even with as brainwashed as our society is, I don't see how that makes a big impact or counts as election meddling as much as a dead registration voter would, or stuffed ballot boxes do. I think we've seen it over and over and over again in many different elections. I'm not even just talking about the past election cycle. I'm not talking about 2016. I'm talking about further back. And we've had this problem for a long time that we've just kind of brushed over altogether. The registration of people who are not legal in this country, and the people that have passed away still ending up on ballots. And it's very easy to manipulate these types of ballots if we are not all participating. So if you go into talking about, how many people are turning up on these voter registrations that are deceased, how many people saw the huge trucks that were bringing in these early ballots from I think it was Browning County, Browning. So a lot of people have been looking into the home front election meddling and kind of not really taking it seriously, in my opinion. What they're doing is they're bringing attention to it, and then it's passing along. It's just on to the next onto the next big story or big thing. And the fact that not only Democrats but also Republicans jumped on the foreign interference bandwagon so quickly, it really made me kind of step back and question, okay, I get it. There could have been some foreign interference in the way of Twitter ads or whatever, because I still have not seen any concrete evidence of foreign election interference. So my question is, when two opposite parties bind together on one cause, is there a deeper reasoning behind it? Is it because they don't want to address the issues here at home? Is this because we have a problem and it's on both sides of the aisle and everybody knows that they're guilty? So like a child, they point fingers and say, it wasn't me, it was them. That's my question. We've been talking about dead registrated voters for years, and still to this day, there's nothing really being done to help that. So as an American, I think that it's really important for us to educate each other, educate one another as to what the most important elections are. Also understand that these Congress members are your, make part of your electoral college. They're the ones that are going out and actually voting for the President of the United States. President of the United States doesn't represent me personally, doesn't represent you personally. He represents the states as a whole. He's our face of our nation to foreign officials, to foreign affairs. So when you're talking about going in and participating in an election and crying about the Electoral College and how the founding fathers wanted the election process to work, you really need to understand why they put it in perspective the way that they did, and who really carries more power than who. So I would just like everybody to really get out and participate in your congressional midterm elections, participate in your state and local elections. Those happen all the time. Those are the people that actually dictate your life right now. They are the ones closest to you. They're the ones who, if you're not satisfied with garbage pickup, if you don't like the way the streets look, if you think that fines are too high, it's all because of the people that you put on the state and local levels. So participate in every election that you can and really get out there and make a difference. Start taking back our country. And this is where we start, is utilizing our power as Americans to go out and say, you know what, we're not happy with what you people are doing, and we're going to make our voices heard. Calling after the fact, it definitely helps, but it's not going to make a change. Petitioning, rioting, rallies, all this stuff is not going to 100% work. But I will tell you what will 100% work is going out and voting, and kill the narrative that your vote doesn't count. Please kill that narrative, because these elections are based solely on the popular vote, and that's what you want for this presidential vote. So anybody that tells you that their vote doesn't count, tell them that, yeah, in congressional and midterm elections, you're one vote per person, and that is where the power is basically coming from. They're the ones who are writing our laws. They're the ones who are representing our cities. They're the ones that are representing our states, and they are the ones that hold more power than the president, in my personal opinion, and obviously in the Constitution, because these are the type of people that are holding their jobs for an extended period of time. These are the ones that end up being the career politicians, and the only people that are going to end these career politicians are the American people. We have to become responsible for checking and balancing our own government. And it all starts with getting out there and taking a vote. So guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the content. Please like, share, and subscribe. I haven't told you guys that in a really long time, and I do apologize for the erratic video timeline here. I would just like to say humbly that number one, I do all my own research. Number two, this is all on a cell phone. I don't have a computer or anything like that, no fancy equipment. And number three, it's just me. So I like to do a little bit of research before I start speaking on a subject. I don't like to just go out half-cocked. And I really appreciate everybody that has found me through the Support for Virginia and video, and has subscribed and viewed a lot of my content. And I thank you guys for your comments, and I really appreciate you guys listening to me, and I will see you on the next one.